Since President Donald Trump decided to unilaterally escalate tensions between the United States and Russia by bombing a Syrian airfield, I think those of us who have been paying attention to the situation knew that we were going to be in for a terrifying couple of years. And when you combine that with the vigorous saber-rattling by Democrats and Republicans, the prospect of a new Cold War seems long gone. It just seems like now we're actually in the midst of a new Cold War. And as of late, things took a turn for the worst. So I've been saying we need to de-escalate, because the situation right now is so tense that we don't want to do anything that could potentially catalyze a conflict between the US and Russia in Syria. But unfortunately, the situation is deteriorating. The New York Times reports long-running tensions between the United States and Russia erupted publicly on Monday as Moscow condemned the American military's downing of a Syrian warplane and threatened to target aircraft flown by the United States and its allies. The Russians also said they had suspended their use of a hotline that the American and Russian militaries used to avoid collisions of their aircraft in Syrian airspace. Russia's warnings could turn out to be posturing. The Russian military has threatened to halt its use of a hotline in the past, notably after Mr. Trump ordered April's missile launch, only to continue and even expand its contacts with the United States military. But in the complicated and quickly unfolding situation in Syria, even bluster can risk an unintended showdown. So basically, Russia is now doing what Hillary Clinton proposed. So they're saying, we have this area above Syria that if you cross this space, if you violate this no-fly zone that we've set up, we're going to shoot down your plane. Now, this is basically what Hillary Clinton was arguing for. She said that she wants the U.S. to implement a Syrian no-fly zone, and if Russia crosses that, then what do? You shoot down their plane, obviously. So, regardless, we got the Syrian no-fly zone. It's just that Russia is the one who's implementing it and not the United States. So, the situation itself is incredibly scary, and as the article states, they could very well be posturing, as many big states do. But the problem is that we can't risk escalating the situation even if they are posturing. The situation is so tense and could be potentially explosive that there's no room for error. We can't try to guess what they're thinking. We have to take all of their threats seriously and acknowledge that we must now do everything we can to de-escalate the situation. And the problem with the United States is that their presence there is making matters worse. We're not helping the situation. We're shooting down Syrian fighter jets that are bombing ISIS, and it's pissing off Russia, and it's just making the situation worse. So we need to de-escalate. So the New York Times continues, anytime we have multiple armed forces working in the same battlefields without deconfliction, there is a dangerous risk of things spinning out of control, said Douglas E. Lute, a retired three-star Army general who was the United States representative to NATO until January. Tactical incidents on the ground or in the air over Syria can be misunderstood and lead to miscalculation. American military officials rushed to de-escalate the situation, saying they hoped Russia could be persuaded to keep using the hotline. The Pentagon also vowed to continue airstrikes against the Islamic State in Syria. Now, according to ABC News, the White House press secretary Sean Spicer said the United States will protect its interests in Syria and will do what we can to keep open lines of communication with Russia and Syria. So, in other words, they know that they need to de-escalate, but they're not doing everything they can. Sean Spicer said, we're doing what we can to keep the line of communication open between the United States and Russia, but that's not good enough. Doing what you can is not good enough. If you really want to de-escalate the situation, it's simple. You pull out, leave the situation alone. We have no interest in Syria. Get out of there. Let Russia fight ISIS, let Iran fight ISIS, let Assad fight ISIS. Let's not take on another war. We've been in 2 wars since before I was old enough to vote. We're now bombing multiple countries, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan. I mean, how many countries do we have to invade before we learn our lesson? Our presence is not appreciated by anyone in the world. We're the only ones who thinks that we're doing something good. Syria doesn't want us there. The American people don't want to be there. It's time we get out. So if you truly are serious about de-escalating tensions, you leave. You allow other countries to fight ISIS for us. And the thing that is so frustrating is that I feel bad for the anti-interventionist people who voted for Trump based on this one single issue, because he actually, his rhetoric on Syria it was better than Hillary Clinton's, because Hillary, her stance, I mean, the policies that she would implement would escalate the situation and tensions between the U.S. and Russia. But Donald Trump had a more libertarian stance. He thought that the U.S. shouldn't be getting involved. And what did he do? He gets elected, starts ramping up wars across the world, but certainly in Syria almost immediately. So it's beyond frustrating. We do not need to do anything to catalyze a new Cold War if we haven't already done that. And certainly, we need to make sure that there's no conflict between the U.S. and Russia in Syria, because I don't think Syria is worth causing World War III over. So, and people like to say that I'm being hyperbolic when I talk about the prospect of World War III, but if I'm being hyperbolic, then maybe that's the case. Maybe you're right. But I think that erring on the side of caution is the reasonable thing to do if you're a humanitarian, if you're a humanist, if you're a liberal. Because war between two nuclear-armed countries will be an unmitigated disaster, and I don't even want to think about it. So the answer is to de-escalate completely by pulling out. Will Donald Trump do that? Of course not, because the United States never learns its lesson.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.